whistleblower in NHS. So, as per the definitions, you are a whistleblower if you are a worker or if you report anything wrong. This could be something at work which you have seen, or maybe not. But it has to be in the public interest. This is the definition of what a whistleblower in NHS would be. It could be unsafe practices for patients or customers, unsafe working conditions, lack of or poor response to a reported incident, suspicion of fraud, financial irregularities, a bullying culture, which Amara has pointed out. And there are various official reporting channels how you can raise your concerns. It could be through the regulators, it could be through the parliamentarians or elected representatives, or through the media for that matter. There is official legislation in terms of Public Interest Disclosure Act of 1988, which protects the whistleblower from any harm if they do raise any concerns. How effective is that? Well, let's move on and see. These are the salient features of what the Public Interest Disclosure Act, PIDA, of 1998 says. Anyone making a disclosure in the public interest, qualifying disclosures could be somebody's health or safety is in danger, there is danger to the environment, there is a criminal offense in offing, an organization is not obeying the law, there is failure to comply with the legal obligation, there are miscarriages of justice, or there are deliberate attempts to cover up. In our NHS, we've heard of many famous cases which all started to come out of the realms by whistleblowing. Most commonly and most recently, the Lucy Letby cases, which was whistleblowed by the pediatricians of that unit. The Harold Shipman case, the mid-stabs inquiry, which was referred to in Amara's report, and I will refer to Lord Francis's comments as well. Bristol Hart, Ian Peterson. So, although we've got the PIDA and other legal frameworks to protect the whistleblower, these are not my views. This is what the national media says. Whistleblowers are not well protected. Lord Francis himself says that NHS crushes those who wishes to speak out. We've seen that in the Lucy Letby case. We've seen it in many other instances. The BBC has reported these things time and again. And unfortunately, what comes out in the press is not untrue. This is what happens in real life. The whistleblower is made an example, shredded to pieces and sent packing. Now it comes to me. So back in the early part of COVID, in July 2020, I gave an interview to the Channel 4 about the doctors not being provided adequate protective equipment. And I'm sure everyone sitting in this hall is very well aware of the realities of that time. On the 31st of May, if I remember correctly, I was the first consultant in my trust to start operating again. And funny enough, when I went to operate, my sister in the operating theatre said, "Oh, have you not brought your own FFP3 mask?" I said, "Excuse me, what do you mean? Should I have bought it myself? Is the trust not able to provide me one?" "Oh no, those masks are only for ITU people." So I said, "Thank you very much. I think I should go home." So on that, there was a pause, and then somebody went out and brought in 2 masks one for me and one for my registrar, and said, this is what we can manage. You have to use it for the 4 cases which you've got on your list. So for the whole day, for 4 cases, I had used one FFP3 mask and my registrar had the other. The sentiments were very raw and very inflamed. This gentleman is the only urologist who died in the pandemic. Mehboob Chaudhry was the urologist in London. And the rough part is, 3 days before he got admitted with COVID and subsequently died within a week or so, he wrote on his social media handle that we are at risk and we are not being provided protective equipment. He was a few years senior to us, and as a urologist, our community is very small and people know each other though. It was a moving experience. Not to say that there was widespread reports on the media saying that doctors are not being given protective equipment. I think we all know the details about that. So this all was the backdrop of my Channel 4 interview. So, as I said, the interview happened in July 2020. There were 3 Birmingham members of Parliament who took notice of that interview and wrote to the chief executive asking about what was happening in terms of PPE in the trust and so on. The chief executive asked the clinical director, mind you, the clinical director was not a urologist. I was interviewed and my concerns were kind of brushed apart, and that was that. Things moved on. I started getting funny emails a year later asking me, where do you do your private practice? What times do you do your private practice? What type of work do you do in your private practice? And I wrote back to them and said, everything is very well documented in the job plans and the appraisals. So I don't understand what's this line of questioning or line of probing going on. So this email discussion went to and fro for a few months. And then one day the medical director calls me and says, well, we have to formally investigate you for doing private practice in NHS time and working beyond the scope of practice. Okay. The complexity of the matter still did not hit me because my paperwork was clear, my conscience was clear, and in myself I was not doing anything wrong. So I said, fine, you want to interview me? By all means do it. So it took them another 6 months to formally interview me in May 2022. And to my naivety was that I still probably did not appreciate the gravity of the situation and did not have any formal legal help even at that stage, and was accompanied by one of the senior colleagues out of the trust who has been an senior manager in another trust in the Northwest. And then they gave a report in August 2022, and this is where the reality hit me that this is something serious. And I spoke to a few colleagues and again was advised to get legal help. And that I wish I would have done earlier in hindsight. But hindsight is an amazing thing, isn't it? So the conclusion of the report that I was given in August 2022 said that a formal MHPS investigation will commence for alleged private work in NHS time. The consequences of that could be dismissal, report to GMC for erasure, or if I'm lucky, warning and penalties and financial penalties and that sort of punishment. It was alleged that I have done 350 sessions of private work in 3 years. Can you believe it? 350 sessions, meaning more than 100 sessions a year. Like, as I was Murli had calculated, 2 or 3 sessions a week. How could anyone in the right frame of mind and planning do that? But that was an official report. So when the legal help was sought, naturally the lawyers got involved and they said, well, give us all the documentation. How are you saying such a big offense has been committed? And they won't give us a report. They won't give us the documents. To the point that eventually the lawyers put in a final complaint that if you don't give us the report in the next 10 days, we are going to go to the High Court and seek an injunction. So eventually, those documents were given to us in November, about 4 months after that so-called report was given to us. So it became much clearer that there was complete wrong interpretation of the job plans. There were concerns regarding the protective disclosures I have made previously. My designated private sessions on the job plan were taken as NHS time. And out of those 3 years of work, only 18 sessions were shown when I might have finished my NHS work early and started my private session early and so on. There was no complaint of any absence or any patient neglect. There was no evidence to working beyond the scope of practice. So we raised a formal grievance, and I did not know what grievance was at that time. And that was in February. And on raising the grievance, the threat for persecution was paused. The grievance hearing happened in June 2023. And with all the documentation, the trust conceded that the investigations were flawed and that allegation of 350 sessions was untrue. This was by the CMO himself. But funny enough, rather than conceding that the investigation was wrong, they said, oh, let's investigate it again. And there was a very interesting email from the trust solicitors to the trust saying, I'm afraid you can't do that. So the HR and the senior management of the trust themselves were probably not conversant to the rules and regulations. So that process was stopped by the trust's own solicitor. So we lodged a grievance appeal against that judgment. It took them 8 months to convene a grievance appeal, which eventually happened in April last year. And the grievance appeal looked into all the documentation and said, fine, the initial investigation is wrong and you cannot persecute anyone on the basis of that. So what they said, if you want to persecute this person, if you want to investigate it, you have to do another investigation. And mind you, this is 3 years down the line. 3 years of turmoil, financial burden, loss of peace of mind, etc., etc. Let's not go there. So at that point, I guess, I don't know whether the better sense prevailed. What happened? The medical director then initiated an informal meeting process and mutually agreed to conclude this matter with clear written agreement that there will be no further investigations, there will be no GMC referral, and most importantly, there will be no obligation on me to keep quiet. So these are my points of learning, and not just for me, maybe for everyone else. Believe in yourself, most importantly. Be careful of people around you who you talk, you would know who your friends are in difficult times. Check your job plans. In my case, in our trust, we were so lax. All the job plans were done by the clinical lead. We never signed any job plans. We never knew what was in the job plans. And on the basis of those job plans, I was persecuted. Seek legal help early. But most importantly, be mindful that this was a contractual problem, and indemnity with your MDU and MDUS or whatever does not help you in such times. In your mortgages, you have a legal clause in which you can seek legal help up to a tune of between 50,000 to 100,000 pounds, and that really helped me. Otherwise, I might not have been able to sustain the legal costs. And most importantly, please do not stay quiet. Seek help, talk to people who you think you can trust, and this is probably the way you will be able to overcome that. Stay positive. I did not take a single day's leave with all the stress and kept going on with my life as things moved on. I did not keep quiet. BBC came to know about it. They interviewed me. The punchline is speak about your experiences. Don't suffer in silence. This is my experience. I say the same to you. Do not suffer in silence. Seek help early. And only this is how injustices will be remedied. Thank you very much. This is my colleague. I dedicate this presentation to Dr. Suresh, who was falsely accused of sexual misconduct, was not brave enough and took his own life. We don't want this. Thank you very much.